On this episode of ResiWeek, we talk Crestron's new 2018 residential roadmap, as well as how quick AV projects can help your business. All this and more on this episode of ResiWeek.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is ResiWeek episode 96, Control Your Destiny.
Support for AVNation is brought to you by Draper and by FSR.
Welcome to ResiWeek. This is your weekly wrap-up of all the latest news and stories for the residential AV industry. I'm your host, Matt D. Scott for AVNation.tv, and today I'm pleased to be joined by Bryce Nordstrom. He is the Chief Sales Officer for Access Networks. How are you, sir?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. I am not talking very well today, so I'm glad that I have my good friend Rich Fregosa. He's the principal and founder of Fregosa Design to be here to help me and pick up all my stumbling. How are you, buddy?
Good. Mellow West Coast greetings on this lovely winter day here. So
winter?
Just chilling out.
Don't start.
Ish.
What is it, 70?
It's freezing. It's 60. I almost wore pants.
60. Are you going to be okay?
Yeah, we'll survive.
Yeah, it was 30 degrees when I left the house this morning. It was cold. All right, gentlemen, let's kick this right off. This comes to us from CE Pro and Jason Knott. Crestron has outlined their 2018 Resi roadmap, which includes ping video and maybe more importantly, a fairly significant cut to their dealer base. What they've done is they have released a bunch of new products or announced the release of these new products, including some new motorized shades, two kind of fantastic remote controls, new keypads, ping video, DM with 4K distribution with HDR, and some new AV over IP solutions. In addition to that, they also announced that they have just completed a 10-month-long purge of 300 of their integrators on the residential side, that is. That equates to essentially 20% of their current authorized dealer base. So first, let's jump into the product side of this, and then we can talk about the dealer shakeup. Rich, you've been involved in Crestron for quite a long time, we'll put it. When you look at some of these new products that they've released, stuff like the horizontal shades are new to them. It's not groundbreaking to anyone. I haven't seen too much in this that I don't want to say gets me overly excited, but it just looks like a bunch of new rollouts that come down the line. What in this did you see that got you most excited?
I don't know if excited would be the word. I think it was, I appreciated that they did listen to some of the dealers over the course of the year or two of some of the objects that they're looking for. And Crestron's approach as they've grown over the years. We've gone from a couple of dozen SKUs in the late 80s, early 90s to, I've even lost count. But they're in the thousands of SKUs at this point. And Crestron's approach has been to be a one-stop solution whenever they can. So I think that this is a further development of them saying, we do provide control systems. We do provide audio matrix controllers. We do provide video switching units, HDMI extenders, speaker lines now, and they're looking, and now they've got the remote controls, and Shades has been a recent introduction in the last 5 years, and they're saying, okay, like you just said, it's been out there before. It's nothing ground shaking, but it just allows them to be able to offer a product that they don't have to go to one manufacturer for 80% of the house, and then 20% of the house where they do need a motorized shade line where they have to possibly go to another manufacturer, and then you have mismatches and control issues and fabric, and all of these things that come into it. So I think that their approach was, let's flesh out the product line in order to provide our dealers who are offering these products everything they need to be able to do to provide a front to back solution. And in terms of the remotes, the jury is out. There's some great ideas that were developed. like I said, it will be interesting to see, how the reaction is. The reaction I've heard so far has been positive, and I think like everything, I mean, it's tough to build the perfect product. There's
Right.
going to be something that's missing, or something that somebody felt was important that somebody else didn't, and I think that they're trying very hard to reach the majority of the dealers and giving them a product that they're looking for, and that'll reach it at price points that they want. So again, I am appreciative of the efforts that they've made thus far.
Bryce, to kind of play off what Rich was saying, obviously the remotes kind of became a bit of a snarky topic back and forth across social media. Julie did a piece on, and it's noted in that original piece, that the 1980s Radio Shack called and they want their remote back. I think that was a comment from someone on the forums. But when you look at those remotes, as much as, dare I say, millennials are perfectly comfortable with having a remote on their phone and a completely touchscreen based remote, there is a large portion of the population that loves that physical rocker button, that loves to be able to hold it in your hand, not look at it, not think about doing anything, but just change the channel. And beyond that, there's a lot of auxiliary rooms that require a remote that a lot of times, no matter what the scope of the project is, the client doesn't want to spend a ton of money on that auxiliary room, but they still want it connected. Right. Was that really the focus that in your mind Crestron had when they looked at this and said, we haven't done a completely touch screen free remote in quite a long time. This fits that bill.
Yeah, I mean, you look at a guest room. Do you want to have to teach somebody how to use the remote in the guest room, or open up an app, or do those kind of things? So I think that's from that standpoint, it totally makes sense to have a hard button remote that somebody can walk in, see on the nightstand, pick it up and push whatever button that's labeled to watch TV or whatever, and the TV comes on, to not have that learning curve, especially in those scenarios. So yeah, and then as you mentioned, channel surfing on a touchscreen without
kinda
looking
sucks.
It's very difficult. Your finger moves when you're not looking. So if you hit the button and you hit the wrong button, then you're moving on. I think what you're seeing is a separation between generations, right? So you're seeing that separation between a lot of what integrators would consider their current clients and where their new clients are coming from, which is the millennial generation. Millennials don't typically have TV service in a traditional sense. They don't have a satellite box or a cable box or something like that. And that's where channel surfing comes in. And that's where you need that kind of remote. But my parents do. I still have a hard button remote because I channel surf. I want to be able to just flip the button and go up and down and memorize where the number keypads are and push the buttons and get to that channel. So I think that's the difference too, is that generation gap where you've got millennials that are perfectly confident and comfortable with using Netflix as their main TV service or Amazon TV as their main TV service. And in that case, you can't channel surf. You have to use some type of user interface to move back and forth.
Very good. All right. Before we let this go, and Bryce, before we asked Richard his opinion on this, we kind of talked a little bit before we started about them, Crestron that is, eliminating this 20% of their dealer base. When you look at that on the outside, and you work for Access Networks, what would happen if you guys eliminated 20% of your dealer base. How big of a deal is this for Crestron? Or were they strictly, because they specifically stated, John Clancy specifically stated, that it wasn't just sales numbers, it wasn't just training, it was kind of a mesh of all those things combined. Was people that weren't trained, people that weren't hitting sales numbers, people that had a lot of customer feedback, we'll say, maybe not complaints, but a lot of feedback. Is this them just culling out some of the, shall we say, casual dealers, or is there more at play here?
I think it probably comes from a little bit of both. It's calling out the casual dealers, like you're saying, that just picked up a job or two to somebody presented them, hey, we have this big job and it's a Crestron opportunity, so they go and get signed up as a Crestron dealer.
Mm-hmm.
They do one or two jobs and then they fall by the wayside. They don't keep their training up. They're not consistent with business. The problem with those kind of accounts is the amount of overhead that you have to have internally to keep on top of them. Meaning, if they're not going to go to the training, not going to become proficient, they become a tax on your whole system, from ordering product to getting, having people in front of them from a sales point of view so that they understand all the products that they can sell. And then also from the support side, if they're not proficient, they're not doing a good job for their clients, then that leads to more support calls. And if you want to do the same amount of business, and continue to do that same amount of business as Crestron, one of the ways to do that would be, or profitability wise, one of the ways to do that would be to shore up the accounts that you have and have it be less taxing on your infrastructure so that you don't have to increase your overhead, right? So then you still create profitability that way. A lot of that business, you and I talked about this earlier, a lot of that business might end up transitioning to existing Crestron dealers, just because if they have a Crestron system, they're still going to need a Crestron person. If they create that relationship, that business isn't necessarily going to go somewhere else, especially if they get a good one.
Right.
They get a good dealer. So I think it's necessary from time to time to shore up your dealer base, especially when you're a forward-facing product like Crestron.
Right.
Meaning that customer sees that name. With us, it's a little different because we're an infrastructure part. So it's definitely different than it is for something that they see the brand name on the wall.
Very good. Richard, just before we move on, from the integrator side or the dealer side, if you were one of the accounts that maybe got called, or you're looking forward and going, well, they just can't 20% of my friends, maybe this will hit me on the next wave, because not necessarily because you picked them up for one project or two projects and then you just didn't do anything with it, but maybe it's just a higher echelon product that isn't your day-to-day bread and butter. What is an integrator to do if they got included in this culling, or B, if they think that they might be on the cusp of that? How do they change their business going forward?
Well, I would have to say that of the dealers who were culled, I don't think this came as a surprise to any of them. First off, there's always the saying that with any manufacturer, you've got 80% of your support calls are from 20% of your dealers. Mm-hmm. So I think that those dealers themselves who may have found themselves on the outside looking in, first off, is that they may have a friend of mine, Mark Levecchia, always says they may have tried to outkick their coverage, where they had a great idea of what they thought they wanted to do. Because everybody has goals for their company and goals for the market that they want to reach and the type of business that they want to do. At times it might be the necessary reflection of the industry, and regardless of whether it's sales, but client feedback, project feedback, the ability to complete a project, the ability to complete a project well, all of these things that if, when customer satisfaction plays into it, that they that their company may just not be suited for that market. And so it's an opportunity for them to look back and say, okay, let's look at our product mix. Let's look at our business model. Let's look at our past sales. Let's look at the type of sales that we've made. And if it falls outside of that, again, it's great. Everybody wants to drive a Ferrari, I bet. It's just, is it practical for everybody to have one? It's the same concept. And from a business standpoint, I think it allows companies to take a much more detached view at their business. And it's going to sting. Nobody likes to be, quote unquote, fired from anything. But sometimes that winds up being the best thing for a company, because it will cause them to refocus. And again, there are other options. You've got your distributor network. There's all kinds of, there's local buying groups. There's obviously CEDIA training, which can help you out. There's a lot that this industry offers that I think that at times companies feel that they get a little bit isolated and they're on an island, and they forget to look at the greater industry and all of the opportunities it provides as a whole. So I'm going to take it as I hope it provides them an opportunity to kind of refocus their business model to something that'll be successful for them in the long term.
Very good.
It's kind of like hiring a secret shopper in retail.
Yeah.
You have somebody that comes in and critiques your business, and that's what this forces you to do, is kind of critique your own business.
Very good. All right, gentlemen, let's move on to a story that comes to us from Residential Systems and our good friend Todd Anthony Puma. Quickie AV projects. Good things can come from small packages. Now, the gist of this story is essentially to not overlook those maybe small calls that you get in or contact forms that you get in every day to come and just fix a small thing, because a lot of times you can get in the door, do a very quick project and get out, get paid, and you never know who that client's going to know, who's going to be in their circle of influence, and what can come out of that type of project. Bryce, when dealers are looking at this, a lot of times we seem to get caught up in, the really, really big projects, especially if you're not, for lack of a better term, a hang and bang installer. If you're someone who does whole home projects and things such as that, when you get that phone call to come mount a TV, you a lot of times will put that on the back burner. How important is it for dealers, as they're continuing to try and grow their business, to not shun those calls, to realize that, hey, maybe you hire one extra guy who can take care of all those people, because you don't know where it'll lead?
Yeah, I think, the more we talk to dealers across the country, the more we're starting to see a trend towards where certain size companies, and you have to have the infrastructure and the amount of people in place to do this, they actually put these type of requests out on their service team instead of on their main installation team. So they'll have one or two service guys that are capable of going out and doing a TV install or things that Todd had stated in his article, where you can kind of generate some income off of that. A lot of times service guys, it's hard for them to generate income because they're actually doing warranty service as well. Mm-hmm. So this is a way for them to tie that in and also fill in time where you may not necessarily have service calls. For smaller companies, it's a little bit more difficult. But I think the important thing to take away from what Todd was saying is that he took control of a couple, especially on the second one, some infrastructure parts of the job, meaning he was more in control of his destiny. He was taking control of the network, for example. If he were to do either one of those jobs at a $5,000 price point and not have control over the network or administration rights over the network, or replace the network with product that he knows and can speak to its capabilities, then he leaves himself a little bit more open for failure. Actually, a lot of bit more open for failure because he's not in control of his destiny. So that's one of the things that we talk about quite a bit is taking control of at least the network on site. So if you're dealing with other people's products, you can more or less control your outcome.
Very good. Richard, when dealers go after these smaller projects, there's a lot of concern that you're going to get lost in overhead. You're going to get dropped down with, just a lot of issues that have a tendency to come up with these smaller projects. How do dealers go about making sure that, A, they can hopefully grow this into referral business, but B, and probably more importantly, that they don't get burned by a couple of these small clients where, again, you're walking in to do one little thing and all of a sudden you broke the entire house?
It's I keep coming back to all of these old axioms, but the best customer is the one that you've already got. Mm-hmm. This is somebody who obviously went out of the way and is seeking you for whatever reason, whether you were referred, they found you, across, maybe your social media campaign picked up and it worked up, and they Googled, home theater or something, and your name popped up at the top of the list. So again, this is also a matter of being able to track where your advertising and where your marketing effort is going, and seeing that you're able to pull this in. I think for dealers, it's real simple. It's just mind your business. When you come to it, it's you're a solution spreader. We've said this so many times before, right? If you're coming in for a repair or a fix or a takeover, and again, I'm somebody who's made a career off of turning around projects, and that's my specialty is takeover projects. There is a lot to be said about creating goodwill with the client that you can't necessarily generate off of a sale initially, but you can quantify it pretty quickly over a period of time. In terms of any project when you come in, the easiest thing is just how you lay out your scope of work. If you are coming in after a previous install, great. You come in. Part of your process, it's like what you do when you take a car in, right? Don't they do like the 32-point checkout? Same thing. Technician comes in, great. Before we take over the project, we just want to make sure we want to do we want to check the status of your system as it is right now. Here are the things that you've reported. This doesn't work. This doesn't work. We're going to go through the operation. We're just going to verify all of these things, okay? And we're going to document it. Great. Pull up the list. Okay, these are the things that you said worked. These are the things that you said didn't work. We all agree at this point, right? Great. Initial here, we're going to begin our work. Based on our estimation on this type of project, it's going to take this long, right? Anything above and outside of our, outside of our scope or outside of our control, because we are assisting you, will be X. And communication goes a long way. And I think that for a lot of dealers, they have a much better relationship with equipment than they do with people at times. Yeah. And so it's a matter of cultivating that relationship. When you are walking into a project like that, this is strictly about expectation management. It's about explaining to somebody what they have. Because a lot of times people don't even know what they have. They just had a laundry list of goods, and all they know is that they can't watch TV at 7 o'clock at night because something happened. Well, it's your job as their technology advisor to give them as much information as they need so that they understand, and then the time and the effort and possibly the hardware or services that are needed in order to achieve that goal. And if they agree with that and they feel good, you proceed. If they don't, you can already decide that it's not a good fit. And if it's not a good fit, it's not that they're a bad customer or you're a bad dealer. You're just a bad fit for one another at that time. So for dealers, it's a matter of taking your time, explaining what you do, being very clear, setting the expectations, and very rarely do I hear about clients complaining that that things were over-explained to them.
Right. All right, gentlemen. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. Bryce, if people want to connect with you, where can they do that?
The easiest way is just shoot me an email, bryce@accessca.com.
Excellent. Thanks again for joining us. Rich, always a pleasure when you're here. Where can people connect with you?
Probably the best thing is, where's my finger? Ooh, doop. If you're watching on TV, at @rfregosa on Twitter is a great way to get a hold of me. Type my name into the Googles. Things will pop up, but also fregosadesign.com, or you can find us here on AVNation, on ResiWeek, or on A State of Control.
Very good. Thanks again for joining us. For myself, you can find me at Matt D. Scott on Twitter and every other social platform. But more importantly, please take a moment to stop by AVNation.tv. You'll find this show as well as a wide variety of our other shows with all the verticals that we cover. When you visit the website, please take a moment to check out our underwriters. We are extremely thankful for their support, like Access Networks, and ask that you check them out and support them as well. Thanks again for watching. That's all the time we have for this episode of ResiWeek.